section 11.2 is about William Henry Harrison and John Tyler. William Henry Harrison is not going to be president very long, and then John Tyler will take over his presidency. So in the election of 1840, the Whigs are going to run William Henry Harrison as the president, and he will choose John Tyler to run as his vice presidential candidate. The Democrats, Martin Van Buren is going to be running for re-election. However, one of the things that he does during his presidency is he chooses not to annex Texas. And that is a big problem. A lot of Americans want Texas to come in as a territory. And so the fact that he doesn't want that causes an issue. Harrison wins the election, 234 electoral votes to 60. It's a huge landslide. Very easily Harrison wins. Slavery is an issue during the campaign. The pro-slavery leaders use the Bible as a weapon, basically saying it's in the Bible, therefore it's something that it should be supported. John C. Calhoun, former vice president, says if slavery is abolished, then it will end white racial supremacy in the country, and that should be preserved. There will be a great deal of free soilers. Free soilers are people who want to prevent the expansion of slavery into the West. So what they're going to do is they're going to migrate from the Eastern Seaboard into these new territories and Western areas so that they can populate the area. So when it comes to voting for whether an area should be free or slave, there are more of them so they can vote for it to be a free area. Harrison, he was a congressman, a senator, military leader before becoming president. In the inauguration, he took the oath of office on March 4th, 1841. It is a cold and it is a wet day. And we don't know if he had a cold beforehand or if in the long day that it was, he picked up a cold from someone there on the inauguration day. But by March 26th, it's very obvious that he is very sick. It turned to pneumonia and pleurisy by that time. And just a few days later, he is so sick he cannot get out of bed. On April 2nd, John Tyler will assume the tasks of the president. Then at 12:30 a.m. on April 4th, 1841, 1 month after the inauguration, William Henry Harrison dies. This is the first president to die in office, and also the first president to show that it isn't very clear in the Constitution what happens if a president dies. So the impact of his death is that it revealed these flaws in the constitutional clauses on presidential succession. Article 2 of the Constitution states, in case of the removal of the president from office, or of his death, resignation, or inability to discharge the powers and duties of said office, the same shall devolve on the vice president, and that the vice president shall act accordingly until the disability be removed or a president shall be elected. So nowhere in that sentence does it absolutely say that the vice president becomes the president. So there's going to be this long debate in Congress and in the Supreme Court of what happens now. Does the vice president serve the remainder of the president's term, or should we have an emergency election and elect someone? Chief Justice Roger Taney decided that if Tyler did take the oath of office for the presidency, then he would assume the office of the president. It's not until 1967, with the addition of the 25th Amendment, where when it's ratified, we actually have that in the Constitution that says that the vice president becomes the president in case of his death. Tyler was sworn in on April 6th, and so he now assumes the presidency. John Tyler was a Whig. He wants to continue Henry Clay's American system, promote the federal government, industrial development, economic growth. He wants high tariffs, internal improvements, and so all these ideas from the American system. He was from Virginia. He was a state legislator. He was a governor, a congressman, a senator. He endorsed the ideas of Jefferson, to Thomas Jefferson's ideas of what should go forward. So even though he had some things from the American system, which was very Alexander Hamilton, he also endorsed a lot of the ideas of Thomas Jefferson and that of the regular everyday person. He believes South Carolina did have the right to nullify any laws, which is going to cause him some problems throughout his presidency. He does not get elected. He just serves out the remaining presidency of William Henry Harrison. So it's 1841 to 1845. Henry Clay hopes to control John Tyler like he hoped to control William Henry Harrison. Tyler is not going to have any of that. He doesn't want to be a puppet to Henry Clay. He doesn't like Henry Clay, so he basically tells Henry Clay to leave him alone. Fist fights will occur on the congressional floor. Tyler's cabinet resigns. They choose not to support him. In 1842, he has no support by any political party whatsoever, which is one reason why he doesn't get elected for a second term. In February of 1844, while sailing on the Potomac, a cannon explodes. 8 people will die, wounding dozens more. So Tyler then takes this opportunity to reorganize his cabinet because many of his cabinet members are going to die in the explosion. All of his positions go to Southern Democrats. John Tyler very much starts to stack his things that he has for Southerners who support slavery. Tensions will happen with Great Britain. In 1841, we have a slave ship with a slave ship called the Creole. It will revolt, and the slaves will sail to the Bahamas. And Britain, basically, when they get there, it sets all the slaves free because they don't allow slavery within Great Britain or any of its territories at this time. Daniel Webster is going to be sent to the Bahamas to demand their return. Britain says, well, they're no longer slaves, so we can't return something that doesn't exist. This will lead to the Webster-Ashburton Treaty, 1842. It's a joint naval blockade of the African coast to stop the international slave trade. And we conclude where the border between Maine and Canada were at that time. But one of the big things that's going to happen and really overshadow a lot of John Tyler's presidency is that of the independence of Texas. And so how does that all happen? Because it's very big part of his presidency. Well, for Texas, Mexico declared independence from Spain in 1821. Stephen Austin will convince Mexico to allow Americans to settle in what he called a buffer zone. And that's all along the eastern edge of Texas. Austin is going to offer 177 acres to each family group that comes in, saying that no slavery would be allowed. They're going to bring slaves anyway. In 1835, 35,000 settlers have arrived with 3,000 slaves in tow. Santa Anna becomes the president of Mexico, and he has Austin arrested for allowing slaves into that area. Austin is in jail for about 18 months. Then he's released, and Austin then goes on this push for revolution. Texas should be independent. And how the war for Texas independence happens, it all has to do with these 2 towns, the Alamo and Goliad. The Alamo, Santa Anna has 3,000 troops, and he surrounds the Alamo, which has 200 American Texas Rangers in it. And he wants them to surrender. The Alamo is an abandoned Catholic mission that have been taking care of these individuals. In February of 1836, Santa Anna demands the surrender of the Alamo. The Texas Rangers inside say no, and so he has his men storm the Alamo. All the Texans inside are killed, and there are, I believe, 7 individuals who are left alive, so they can go out and tell the story of this is what happens if you defy Santa Anna. So this has led this kind of atmosphere of fear all throughout these, Texas border towns. Nobody's really doing anything, but Santa Anna really wants to pick a fight. So 2 weeks after the Alamo in Goliad, he orders the town to be destroyed. Santa Anna has his men kill everyone in town, about 300 people, and he burns the town to the ground. This immediately is going to spark this idea of we cannot stand for this anymore. So delegates from the 59 Texas towns are going to meet on March 2nd, 1836, and they're going to write their own Declaration of Independence. So the war for Texas now comes into play. Sam Houston, who is a military leader, really pushes for this. Texas needs more settlers, so now, since they have declared independence, they're offering 1,280 acres to every white family that comes and settles in Texas. They don't have to pay for it, they just need to come and settle and agree to be there. The Battle of San Jacinto was a big one, April of 1836. Houston will catch Santa Anna's army napping. The battle only lasted about 18 minutes, but Santa Anna then signs the treaty accepting that the Republic of Texas exists. So the war for Texas independence doesn't last very long. It lasts a couple months at best. But now Texas is considered to be its own independent country by Texans. Mexico refuses to acknowledge anything that has happened, and they're going to send Santa Anna into exile into Cuba. And they're going to push back, but we now have the Republic of Texas, which has stated that this is how they're going to be. The Lone Star Republic says slavery is legal. They're going to ban any free black persons. So you're either a slave if you're a colored individual, or you don't live there. Sam Houston will be labeled as the president. The U.S. presidential actions that happen, that's going to follow this whole thing. So under Andrew Jackson, he didn't want to recognize Texas until his very last day in office. Then Martin Van Buren ignored it completely because he thought it would lead to war with Mexico. He didn't want that. William Henry Harrison, president for only a month, he didn't have a chance to do anything. So then it came to Tyler. And the American people want Texas to come in as a territory and even a state. So Tyler supports annexation. But because it's John Tyler that is supporting it, most people just say, no, we're not going to do anything. Congress says no. When when their next president steps forward, James Polk, and says, yes, we should do this, they support it. But the fact that it was John Tyler, they say no. Negotiations with the Republic to join the U.S. happened throughout his presidency. They signed the Treaty of Annexation of Texas on June 8, 1844. Congress says, nope, we're not going to accept it. Part of the reason is John C. Calhoun has some really racist statements, which to help push the vote from happening. But not long after his presidency is over, we accept it. During that lame duck session between John Tyler and James Polk is when it actually happens. So now we're going to move on and talk about James Polk.